Hypercar ownership is supposed to buy more than speed. It's supposed to buy exclusivity, the sense that every bolt, every switch, every airbag inside a multimillion-dollar machine was engineered in isolation, untouched by the mainstream automotive world. That illusion took a very public hit when a British YouTuber named Matt Armstrong pulled apart a wrecked Bugatti Chiron Purse Sport on camera and found something nobody expected sitting behind the dashboard. Today we're breaking down exactly what happened, why Bugatti tried to shut the project down, and why owners of the world's most expensive hypercars are suddenly asking uncomfortable questions about what's really inside their cars. The car at the center of this story wasn't just any Bugatti. It was a Chiron Purse Sport, a version of Bugatti's flagship hypercar tuned specifically for cornering rather than outright top speed, with sharper gearing, stiffer suspension, and more aggressive aerodynamics than the standard Chiron. Only around 60 were ever built, and each one left the factory in Molsheim, France, carrying a price tag north of $3 million before a single option was added. This particular car belonged to Miami-based influencer Alex Gonzalez, known online by his handle Fselexjit. By late 2025, the car had become a fixture of his social media presence, and then it was gone in an instant. According to reporting from Supercar Blondie, the Purse Sport was involved in a serious front-end collision that crumpled the nose, deployed the airbags, and destroyed a long list of expensive components including the headlights, hood, front wings, and the car's signature horseshoe grille. Insurance estimates for a full factory repair reportedly climbed as high as $1.7 million, and once damage assessments crossed that threshold, the car was declared a total loss, issued a salvage title, and sent to a Copart salvage auction, the same system used for everyday wreck sedans, only this time the vehicle rolling through it was worth more than most houses. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, Gonzalez did something almost nobody in his position would consider. He bought his own wrecked hypercar back. Reporting from Car Scoops puts the repurchase price at just under $1.9 million once auction fees were included, meaning he had already spent close to $8 million total between the original purchase, the insurance payout he forfeited, and the buyback, before a single repair had even begun. This is where the story shifts from an expensive insurance claim into one of the most closely watched build projects in recent automotive history. Matt Armstrong had already built a large audience filming rebuilds of heavily damaged performance cars, but nothing in his back catalog compared to a Bugatti Chiron. He relocated to Miami specifically to take on the project, and what followed became a multi-part documentary series that has racked up millions of views. The scale of the challenge quickly became obvious. The Chiron structure is built around a carbon fiber monocoque tub, essentially the entire skeleton of the car, with the engine, suspension, and drivetrain all mounted directly to it. Damage to that structure isn't like denting a fender. It's closer to reconstructing the frame an entire building sits on. Early inspection reportedly showed the gearbox housing had shattered and the monocoque itself had absorbed real structural stress, concerns serious enough that they would later draw public comment from Bugatti's own CEO. Once Armstrong committed to the rebuild, he ran into a wall that had nothing to do with broken carbon fiber. Bugatti refused to support the project. Multiple outlets reported that once Bugatti learned an independent team intended to rebuild a car the manufacturer had already written off as structurally unsound, the company's answer was immediate and firm. No factory parts, no technical support, no exceptions. The mechanism behind that refusal is what turned this into a genuine controversy rather than just a difficult repair. High-end manufacturers like Bugatti route nearly every meaningful component through dealer networks tied directly to a car's VIN. Once a VIN is flagged internally, as this one reportedly was, authorized dealers simply can't process parts orders for that specific chassis anymore, even if the person requesting them is the legal owner of the car. The vehicle still physically exists, but as far as the factory support system is concerned, it might as well not. Bugatti's own CEO, Mate Rimac, eventually addressed the situation directly and publicly. According to Car Scoops, Rimac pushed back on the wave of urban legend pricing stories that had built up around Bugatti servicing over the years, while also raising a more serious point. A car capable of approaching 300 miles per hour is not something you want reassembled through improvisation. He argued that structural work on a Chiron requires calibrated factory tooling and technicians trained specifically inside Bugatti's own facilities, and that shortcuts on a car this powerful carry real safety consequences. not just for the driver, but for anyone sharing the road with it. He also suggested that Gonzalez's decision to go public and decline Bugatti's in-house repair may have been shaped partly by the attention the saga was generating online. It's worth noting that Bugatti did originally offer to fix the car itself. Reporting from Car Scoops indicates the factory quote started around $1.7 million to have the work done at Molsheim, and that figure was later reduced to somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000. Gonzalez turned the offer down, partly because it required shipping the car overseas to France, and instead chose to keep the project in Miami and pursue an independent rebuild alongside Armstrong. With official channels closed, the workshop in Miami had to become something closer to a small aerospace shop than a traditional garage. There was no factory jig, no manufacturer diagnostic system, and no supply chain to lean on. Nearly everything from that point forward had to be sourced, adapted, or built from scratch. The team leaned heavily on digital reconstruction. Damaged parts were 3D scanned to create precise digital models, which were then used to CNC machine new components to tolerances tight enough for a car built to survive triple-digit cornering loads. One of the most technically demanding tasks involved a critical mounting bracket connecting the engine to the gearbox, which had failed in the crash. Rather than waiting on a part Bugatti wouldn't sell, the team scanned the damaged mount, rebuilt it as a CAD model, and machined an improved replacement themselves, according to reporting from Supercar Blondie. Some fixes were far less glamorous, and honestly a little funny given the price tag involved. When a coolant overflow pipe needed replacing and no factory part was available, the team solved it using a length of rigid brake hose, the kind of fix any home mechanic might reach for on a used sedan, not a multi-million-dollar hypercar. Armstrong also pointed out, almost in disbelief, that the accelerator pedal controlling all 1,600 horsepower was just molded plastic rather than the milled billet aluminum many assumed a car at this price point would use. Then there was the bodywork itself. Since Bugatti wouldn't supply replacement panels, the team turned to Venuum, a specialist shop in Dubai, to fabricate a custom wide-body kit for the car. That kit alone reportedly cost around $700,000. A reminder that even working entirely outside Bugatti's ecosystem, rebuilding a car at this level of engineering never comes cheap. All of that would have made for a compelling rebuild story on its own. What turned it into a genuine controversy was what Armstrong found when he got deep enough into the car's internal systems to start examining part numbers directly. While investigating the airbag system, Armstrong discovered that the Chiron's knee airbags and front passenger airbag carried part numbers identical to components used in the Audi A3, a car that starts at roughly $30,000, a tiny fraction of the Chiron's price. According to Car Scoops, those same airbag units are available through standard Volkswagen Group channels for under $50 each. He also found that the steering wheel airbag matched a part used in the Aston Martin DB11. On the surface, that sounds like exactly the kind of story built for outrage. A seven-figure hypercar quietly relying on parts shared with a compact German sedan. But the full picture is more nuanced than the viral clips suggested. Bugatti has been part of the Volkswagen Group for decades, and shared parts sourcing across VW Group brands, Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Lamborghini, Skoda, and Bugatti itself, is a long-established industry practice, not a secret being hidden from customers. Hidden systems like airbags, sensors, relays, wiring looms, and electronic control units are exactly the kind of components manufacturers across the entire industry routinely source from shared supplier networks, because developing unique hardware for every microscopic subsystem on a car built in quantities of a few hundred would be financially and logistically absurd. Even brands like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and McLaren rely on broader industrial supplier ecosystems for comparable hidden components. What actually ignited the controversy wasn't that the parts existed, it was the gap between what they cost through Volkswagen Group's standard channels and what owners have historically reported paying to source functionally similar components through official Bugatti service pathways, once certification, specialist labor, logistics, and Bugatti's own margins are added on top. That pricing structure has fueled stories for years about extraordinary Bugatti maintenance costs, tire sets said to run past $40,000 because of bespoke high-speed rated compounds, and service procedures on earlier Veyron models that reportedly required removing multiple underbody panels just to reach the oil drain plugs. Rimac has pushed back on some of the more extreme versions of these stories, arguing that much of the five-figure oil change narrative has been exaggerated online over the years. But the airbag discovery gave the broader pricing debate something concrete and visual to point to, which is exactly why it spread as fast as it did. It's easy to read this story as just an entertaining case of a YouTuber embarrassing a hypercar manufacturer. But underneath the viral moment is a genuinely important question about ownership. Once someone has legally purchased a vehicle, even one that's been through insurance, salvage, and a buyback, how much control should the original manufacturer retain over what happens to it next? Bugatti's position, backed publicly by Rimac, was rooted in safety. A car capable of nearly 300 miles per hour shouldn't be reassembled outside a controlled environment where every tolerance can be verified. That's a defensible engineering argument, especially for a structural component like a carbon fiber monocoque, where even small misalignments could theoretically affect handling and stability at extreme speeds. At the same time, Armstrong's team demonstrated something manufacturers rarely like to acknowledge publicly. With enough expertise in digital scanning, CNC fabrication, and structural repair, even one of the most complex road cars ever built can be brought back from the dead outside the factory's own ecosystem. The project didn't just repair a wrecked car, it forced a public conversation about how tightly a manufacturer can lock a customer out of their own vehicle after an accident, and whether the price difference between a shared VW Group part and its Bugatti-branded equivalent is justified by genuine engineering differences or simply by exclusivity itself. Notably, the standoff didn't stay frozen. As the story developed and gained wider attention, Bugatti's position shifted. According to later reporting, the company eventually lifted the VIN blacklist and lowered its own in-house repair estimate significantly from the original $1.7 million figure, suggesting that public pressure, or at least public scrutiny, played some role in softening the manufacturer's stance, even if Armstrong and Gonzalez ultimately chose to continue the independent build regardless. As of the most recent updates, the project has passed several major milestones. The transmission has been separated from the engine block and rebuilt, new radiators have been custom-built to replace the destroyed cooling system, the interior has been reassembled, and, perhaps most remarkably, the car's W16 engine has been started again, a moment that confirmed the drivetrain, fuel delivery, and electronic systems were all communicating correctly after months of teardown. Reports also indicate the car has since moved under its own power, a milestone that carries real technical weight for a vehicle this mechanically complex. There's still work left to finish, and the broader tension between Armstrong's team and Bugatti hasn't fully disappeared even as the company has softened its stance. But regardless of how the final chapter plays out, the project has already left a mark on how people think about hypercar ownership. It pulled back the curtain on an industry that sells itself almost entirely on the idea of untouchable exclusivity, and showed that underneath the carbon fiber and the seven-figure price tag, even the most exotic machine on the road still shares more with the rest of the automotive world than its marketing would ever admit. For Bugatti owners watching this play out, the takeaway isn't that their cars are secretly cheap. Engineering a 1,600 horsepower quad-turbo W16 capable of nearly 300 miles per hour is still one of the most extraordinary feats in the automotive industry, and the vast majority of what makes a Chiron has no equivalent anywhere else on the road. But the myth of total ground-up exclusivity, the idea that every single component was born inside Bugatti's own walls, took a real hit. And thanks to one very determined YouTuber and a very unlucky Instagram influencer, that's a conversation the entire hypercar world is still having. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as wild as we did, let us know what you think in the comments, and stick around for more deep dives into the cars, controversies, and characters shaping the automotive world.